to get my back blown out in peace. You think I got time to talk about a divorce that's a year old?
The world was not ready for what unfolded that night. Teyana Taylor, the woman so many looked up to for her strength and fearlessness, found herself caught in a moment so raw and explosive that it broke through the walls of privacy. The cameras didn't need to be rolling, the story was already alive. It was the scream heard around the internet, the moment Teyana's voice cracked with pain and desperation as Iman Shumpert snapped in fury. And what made it unbearable, what made it truly unforgettable, was the sight of their young daughter, standing helpless in the middle of it all. This wasn't just another celebrity fight. This was heartbreak, this was rage, this was innocence shattered right in front of millions who had once rooted for their love. It had started as quiet whispers. People close to them had sensed tension bubbling under the surface. Friends spoke about long silences between the couple, arguments behind closed doors, subtle cracks in their picture-perfect image. But no one expected those cracks to rip open so violently. Then came the moment of eruption. Iman's temper snapped, his frustration no longer hidden, his anger spilling out like wildfire. Teyana's scream cut through the air, piercing and unforgettable. Witnesses say the sound was filled with fear, a raw plea to stop the chaos. Their daughter's eyes reflected the confusion and terror of a child seeing her safe world collapse in an instant. The scene wasn't just dramatic, it was devastating. And it wasn't long before that moment leaked beyond the walls of their home, finding its way into the hands of fans, blogs, and the unforgiving eyes of social media. But to feel the true weight of this moment, you have to look back at their story. Teyana and Iman weren't just two people in love. They were a force. Their energy together was magnetic, their chemistry impossible to ignore. They turned heads on red carpets, made people smile in interviews, and inspired fans with their passion. To many, they were a dream couple, the ones who could withstand fame, temptation, and all the pressures of celebrity life. Fans celebrated their milestones like their own. Their wedding, their child, their public displays of affection. It all became part of the narrative that love could survive in Hollywood. But shadows had always been there. Rumors of distance began to creep into the conversation. Fans noticed gaps between their posts together, cryptic captions that felt more like messages than celebrations. There were interviews where smiles looked a little forced, where words didn't quite align. People ignored it, choosing to believe in the fairy tale, choosing to believe their love was stronger than the gossip. But now, with this eruption, the whispers feel like warnings no one wanted to hear. The illusion of perfection has been cracked wide open. Behind the glamour and the declarations of loyalty, there were storms raging that no one saw coming. And it wasn't just their love that took the hit, it was their families too. Scandals like this don't stay contained to the couple. They ripple outward, touching everyone around them. Relatives were stunned. Some rushed to Teyana's side, horrified by the thought of her scream being more than just frustration, worried about what she might have been enduring. Others tried to defend Iman, saying fame, money, and the crushing pressure of expectations can drive anyone past the edge. But those private family conversations? They weren't calm. They were battles of their own. Parents worried about the child's well-being, siblings questioned loyalties, and close friends tried to step in only to be pulled into the chaos themselves. Group chats turned hostile, phone calls went unanswered, and bonds that once felt unbreakable suddenly looked fractured. For the families, this wasn't just scandal, it was heartbreak, disappointment, and fear that the damage could never be undone. Meanwhile, the fans turned the scandal into a global stage. The internet has always thrived on drama, but this was different. This wasn't just another story people could scroll past or laugh about for a moment before moving on. This was the kind of spectacle that grabbed everyone by the throat and refused to let go. Twitter exploded with hashtags, endless threads dissecting every possible clue, every pause in an old interview, every shift in body language. TikTok creators jumped in with dramatic edits, slowing down clips frame by frame, comparing facial expressions, and building theories as if they were detectives solving a crime. Instagram became a battlefield where one side flooded comments with heartbreak and empathy, while the other side came armed with defense and denial, each group determined to prove they were right. What had begun as whispers between fans had now erupted into a wildfire that consumed every corner of the internet. Some fans stood firmly with Teyana, their loyalty fueled by her raw scream, convinced that what they heard was proof of pain that had been suppressed for far too long. They argued that her silence up until now was evidence of endurance, of a woman who had carried more than anyone knew, and that her outburst was the breaking of chains she had been forced to wear. Others rallied around Iman, defending him with just as much passion. They insisted he was under immense pressure, that the situation had been twisted beyond recognition, and that the public had no right to judge a man based on a single moment without context. To them, the internet was cruelly rewriting his entire identity, erasing years of loyalty and love in favor of one narrative built on a few seconds of chaos. But the loudest voices weren't debating loyalty. They were crying out for the child. "She's the true victim," they repeated like a chorus. "No child should ever see this." To them, the scandal wasn't just about two adults at war, it was about innocence caught in the crossfire. Fans shared their own experiences of growing up in fractured homes, of watching parents fight and carrying those invisible scars for years. The story shifted in tone, from one of celebrity drama to something that felt painfully familiar to countless people. It was no longer just gossip. It became a mirror that reflected back the struggles of everyday lives. Theories ran wild, as they always do when silence stretches too long. Some whispered that this was the breaking point after years of hidden fights behind closed doors. Others were convinced it was staged, nothing more than a desperate ploy to grab headlines and keep both of their names alive in the press. And then there were the darker whispers, the ones that suggested this was only the beginning of something more sinister, that what had been exposed was just the tip of an iceberg far more dangerous. The lack of clarity made space for speculation to grow unchecked, and the internet, hungry for answers, filled that space with noise. Then came the pivotal moment that changed everything. A video surfaced. It wasn't crisp or polished, grainy, shaky, captured in shadows and half-heard voices, but it was impossible to dismiss. It appeared to show the very instant Teyana screamed, the precise moment Iman snapped. The clip was short, blurred, and full of imperfections, yet that only seemed to make it more powerful. The internet pounced on it like sharks in blooded water. Within minutes, it had been downloaded, reposted, stitched, slowed down, and broken apart frame by frame. Every gesture, every muffled word, every fleeting expression was put under a microscope. Some viewers swore they saw terror in Teyana's eyes, the unmistakable look of someone breaking down under the crushing weight of fear. To them, it was proof that the scream wasn't just sound, it was truth. Others pushed back, arguing that what they saw was a man under stress, cornered and overwhelmed, snapping for only a moment but not crossing into abuse. To them, the video was being exaggerated, twisted to fit a narrative of villain and victim that reality didn't fully support. The debate was brutal, with both sides refusing to concede, but the one thing everyone agreed on was undeniable. The video existed, and it had changed the game. What had once been speculation suddenly felt like certainty. This wasn't gossip anymore. It was evidence, raw and unfiltered. And evidence has a way of silencing doubt, even if the truth is more complicated than the footage reveals. News outlets picked it up within hours, blasting it across headlines and evening broadcasts. Journalists dug deeper, commentators weighed in, and suddenly what had lived in the world of fandom was thrust into the mainstream. The clip wasn't just internet fodder anymore, it was front-page news. The scandal that began with whispers had now become something else entirely. A cultural conversation about love, anger, and the scars they leave behind. It was no longer just about Teyana and Iman. It was about every couple who has ever broken under the weight of expectations, every child who has ever sat quietly in a room while their parents' voices rose like storms, every person who has ever wondered what damage is done when private pain becomes public spectacle. The video had forced the world to look, not just at them, but at itself. And that reflection was uncomfortable. People wanted to gossip, to pick sides, to laugh or cry or rage at the drama of it all. But beneath the spectacle, beneath the hashtags and the slowed-down clips, there was something darker, heavier, and impossible to escape. The truth that no matter how rich, famous, or untouchable someone seems, pain has a way of breaking through. And once it does, it doesn't just belong to them anymore. It becomes part of the world's story, a reminder that behind every scream there is a human heart, behind every scandal there is a cost, and behind every piece of evidence, there is a truth that cannot be unseen. And yet, through it all, silence. No statement from Teyana. No defense from Iman. Just silence. And with every day that passed, the weight of that silence grew heavier. Fans waited, restless, convinced that one word, one statement could shift the story. But nothing came. Instead, questions multiplied. Would Teyana finally speak out and reveal the truth of what really happened? Would Iman defend himself, or would he admit to losing control? Would their daughter be pulled into a painful custody battle, her innocence used as leverage in a fight that should never have touched her? The uncertainty became unbearable. The silence wasn't protecting them anymore, it was suffocating. And that's where the world stands today. Waiting. Suspense thick in the air, fear and curiosity intertwining. Nobody knows what comes next, and that uncertainty is terrifying. Because when the truth finally comes, and it won't just be another headline. It will shatter the image of love, loyalty, and resilience they worked so hard to build. It will divide fans, split families, and perhaps even end careers. The silence is a ticking clock, and everyone knows the explosion is coming. So what do you think really happened? Was this just a moment of stress gone too far? Or was it the breaking point of a relationship already stretched to its limits? Do you believe reconciliation is possible, or has the damage passed the point of no return? Drop your theories in the comments below. We want to hear every angle, every guess, every piece of speculation. Don't forget to like this video if you were stunned by the revelations, and hit subscribe, because the next twist could come at any second. And when it does, you'll want to be here to witness it. Because once the silence breaks, the world will never look at them the same way again.